she never lets me do anything. Whatever I say is she never takes what I say as value. What my words and my voice don't have value in her life. And again, no knock on my sisters, because they've learned how to lead in a way that says, I don't need a man. I got my own job. I got my own career. Especially women of color, which is the most educated people in our country. Black
like
women
most unhappy about some stuff too, with all that education.
Bro, I ain't touching that. That's you. Pastor Saleem said that one, y'all. I ain't touching it.
I love my sisters. We married the sisters.
Yeah.
But it just seems.
Yes, sir. They probably are sisters too.
Yeah, they got a lot of. They are sisters, right? They got a lot of education, but upset about a lot of stuff when it comes to relationships. When it comes to
talk about that, Pastor Saleem.
It feels good, y'all. Just feels so good to be alive. Just to breathe this air free of charge. It just feels good to be in Christ, Just to know that He got me and He got you. It feels good.
I'm blessed. Every morning that I rise, got my health and my strength. Thank the Lord that I'm alive. I'm blessed.
To the Excellent Husbands Podcast, the podcast for husbands by husbands. We are your hosts,
Tim Baldwin
and Saleem Wright. And this is our first episode 1, launching out on a new adventure. Excited about working with my brother Tim. Good brother, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? Excited about this new venture as well, and I want to see where it goes, man. So let's jump in, brother.
Yeah, man, I'm excited too. Nervous, but excited. First time doing something like this. Glad I'm doing it with you.
You got it, man. You got it, brother. You got it. We're going to do this thing. We're going to build these husbands up, man.
I know, man. We're going to help develop some brothers and have a good time.
Yes, sir.
We're going to talk about trending topics. We're going to start with a trending topic. We was touching on a little bit before the show, and Bill Gates just got divorced. Bill Gates got divorced from his wife. I don't even know his wife's name, but we'll find. I guess we'll find that out.
Yeah. I think it might be Melinda Gates. Maybe.
I think it is Bill Melinda Gates. I think it's right. Bill Melinda Gates. So they just got divorced. I think they've been married over 20 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they've had some longevity.
Yeah, long time. And so we know Bill Gates is worth billions and billions of dollars. And first thing I thought about is Bill Gates has to give up half of his income because he ain't had no prenup. So that's about $130 billion that he's got to give up because he's getting a divorce. So I was like, man, I want to talk about this with my brother and get your thoughts on it. This 130 billion. And so I put up the post, and my cousin was like, you know what, for 130 billion, I'm gonna grind it out. I'm not gonna give up no 130 billion. So I don't know what you think about my brother Bill and his wife.
Bill should have had a prenup. No.
Talk about it.
Well, you know what? I listen, as a believer, I think our view is different. In terms of prenups and things of that nature, I don't think that it's wrong. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you and I aren't billionaires, and so our mindsets will probably be different. Mm-hmm. Getting into a marriage and being a billionaire, and so I think the mindset would be different. We were talking offline, and I was saying, someone said to me, well, if my wife wanted half of what I have, I'm gonna have to come sleep at your house. So the mindsets are totally different. Right. But I don't, I wouldn't say that it's wrong if as a billionaire you're a believer,
right?
And you find your spouse, whether you're the husband or the wife, and you're a billionaire, and you find your spouse. I'm not going to say that it's wrong to protect
right
yourself and your financial well-being. Mm-hmm. Because again, I do believe, though, if you go into a marriage and you are a believer and you are well off and you're extremely wealthy, and you go into a marriage with a prenup, it could create some definite friction in the marriage with trust and things of that nature.
Right.
But I'm not a billionaire, so I don't have that problem. So I'm like,
I don't even. Yo,
what say you, brother?
I don't even know if I had to be a billionaire. I could be a thousandaire. Like if I really got, because you know it's funny. Like me and my wife, we were watching this show, or we didn't even watch the whole show, but it's called Marrying Millions or something like that. And the guy, he's worth multi-million dollars, and his girlfriend is a secretary at his company. And he pretty much hits her with the prenup. And so we're talking, and I'm always curious to know her perspective on stuff, especially stuff like that. And she was like, I don't see nothing wrong with it. Like, I think he's smart to get a prenup. And I was like, I was thinking the same thing. Because of the society we live in and how people are, how marriage is so frivolous to people. And a lot of times people got ulterior motives and stuff like that. And I'm the mindset of this. If you marry me, you get everything that comes with me. But if you leave me, then you get nothing. Like you left.
This is the man of God, y'all. This is the man of God.
You left the meal ticket, you know. So I mean, I don't think there's biblical precedence for or against the prenup. I do think it could cause some quote unquote trust issues, but I also think if we're both committed to life, then we don't have to worry about this document ever being used.
Right. Absolutely.
We put it in place because human beings are flawed. Like I'm not going to act like I'm marrying a perfect person. I'm marrying somebody flawed. They're marrying somebody flawed. And most divorces statistically are filed by women. So the brother is like, yeah, I love you.
I'm holding on. Yeah, I'm holding on. You know, brothers will know it's over and just remain and just, you know, until the woman says it. So I think that's more so what the issue is. Most brothers, and we've had experience with this. It's like, okay, they'll move out the house, they'll get another girlfriend, they'll just keep it moving until it's time to get married, and they can't get married.
Right,
exactly. And the wife the woman they want to marry has to make them say, hey, listen, you got to get the divorce.
You got to get the divorce.
So when it's all said and done, the woman is still behind it. She's still
she's still. And it's crazy, man, because I remember you would hear stories like growing up, and people wouldn't meet their other family to the funeral, right? It's like Pop had a whole other side. I thought you was married to me, mom. No, me, mom, and him been living in the same house. They've been separated for a long time.
For 30 years, right?
30 years, and you meet your cousins and your nephew. You're good. Like, wait a minute, I ain't know, but you know, so
sure.
It's interesting, you know, how that goes. But yeah, he got to give up 130 billion, maybe more. But the thing I think was mind-boggling to me is that I don't know what took him to get to that decision. What they went through, because they're not very public people about their relationship. So I just think it's interesting, you know, that's like, look, you're not worth me staying. That 130 billion, I'm okay with losing that.
There was a song there was a song coming up when I was younger, and the name of the song was It's cheaper to keep her.
It's cheaper to keep her. It's cheaper to keep her.
It's cheaper to keep her, man. Listen, $135 I'm mad. Like, yo, wait a minute. You
talk about it, man. Talk about it.
But again, when you look at individuals with those kind of means,
right?
You know, it's probably for him. He probably like, all right, I'm out. You go your way, I go my way. 135 billion is still, I mean, that's crazy money. But if he has it to give, he has crazy money too, and he'll never go broke. But you know, again, man, I think the bottom line is that when we look at marriages today, the value in marriage is not what it used to be. I think that's the bottom line. That we are so transient in our marriages. We're transient with everything that we do. You know, I look at this generation now where and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I love millennials. I got a bunch of them at my church, man. I understand them. I get them. And just like any generation, they have their own quirks and things of that nature. Right. But I think this generation, more than any generation, is very transient in that, and that they go from one thing to another. And it's almost like when I was growing up, it was like you keep a job for 30 years, you retire, and that's not necessarily right. It's not necessarily right. And now these young people, they'll get a job, and 6 months later they go to the next one, and a year later at the next one, and they're shaking and moving. And before, in times past, when you look at a resume and you have several jobs, it was a bad thing. But today, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Kids, these young folks are moving and progressing, but they're very transient, and we see that in marriage a lot. I think that might even help lead us into our topic today, man. Where
I agree, man. Especially when you said the value of marriage, man. How marriage, the mindset around marriage has changed. Everything has changed, and roles, the role, or the definition of roles seem to have changed. So, our conversation today, our topic today is our part one is today. Overarching theme for the show is she won't let me lead. She won't let me lead. And you see my brother over there. He look like henpecked, as the old saying. So she won't let me lead, and this is part one of she won't let me lead, and we're really going to talk about why she won't let me lead. Like, what is the why behind that? So part one is she won't let me lead, and why she won't let me lead. So, brother, I'll let you kind of kick that off.
Yeah. So I want to start this off with scripture, man, because this is who we are. For those of you who are joining us, and this is your first experience with us, Saleem and I are both pastors. We both pastor churches. Myself over almost 11 years. Pastor Saleem was 7, right?
Yeah, it'd be 7
almost
next year. No, next year. Next year makes 7. That's right. Next year makes
7 years, and so between us, we have over 16 years of pastoring and counseling married folk. I don't think there's any story that you could email us, text us, or tell us that would take us by surprise. If you do, I really want to hear it.
Same here.
And we both, between the two of us, man, we have over 25 years of marriage experience. I'm going on 17. Pastor Saleem he'll be 11 in June, right?
11 in June. Praise
11
the Lord.
in June, man. Bless the Lord. And so 11 years and 17 years is nothing to scoff at. So we're talking about 28 years just about a marriage between us. And so we got a little expertise with this subject, man. And we both have messed up some things in our marriages along the way. And as we say in our intro, we've experienced many victories, and we're on the other side of that. So our heart is to really just help husbands, man, help build and strengthen husbands so that husbands can take their rightful places and have fruitful marriages from a biblical perspective. And so for me, I think we need to start from the very beginning, man, when you talk about men leading, right? Genesis 1:26 and 28 says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. I think the first thing that we have to really come to terms with is that God created us in his image, a leader, a visionary, and created us to have dominion, which means for us to have authority over those things that he places in our hands, right? Whether it's our wife, and we'll talk about authority in terms of marriage, because it's not a dutiful thing. It's not, authority from that perspective is not master servant. It's not that relationship. It's actually a willingness for your wife to come under your leadership and allow you to lead. But we got to talk about it from that perspective, that God created us to lead, man. He created us to have dominion. And so we're going to talk about, why she won't let me lead, and why won't he lead. We're going to add that little nuance to it. Okay. And so I'm going to kick it off and say, number one, obviously, as I said, that we should be leaders. We should have dominion, that we have been created inherently to lead, right? From little boys, man, we lead. We are hunter gatherers, and Here's what I believe. This is Tim's philosophy, right? This is not the Bible. This is not the word of God, but this is my heart. I think that part of the problem that we're seeing today, why men don't lead in their marriages, is because of the models that they've had in their lives. The model that the man had, along with the model that the woman has had, right? Our society right now is women outnumber men 6-1, right? And this has been trending for the last. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am. I'm 35. Saleem is older than I am. But it's been trending for the last 50 years, and we knew that around this time in our history that women would outnumber men 6-7-1, and so everything in terms of our society, right? We see women are teachers. You have more women teachers. You have more women raising children. You have more women in the workplace. More women who are in roles of authority in our society, which is absolutely not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. But in terms of modeling, when you put a man child in an environment where the model is women leading, then that's the model that they have. And so I would say one of the things is contextual, right? In terms of the life of both individuals, husband and wife. Wife, what's your context in terms of leading? Did you grow up in a home with all women? Right? Did the women do everything? Are the women super strong? Are the women the leaders of the home? Again, people have to do what they have to do. It's nobody's fault, in terms of homes that have families, and in the families, most of the women are the leaders. They are the alphas, right? And so you have young boys, especially, who grow up watching alpha women instead of alpha men.
Yeah. Yeah.
What say you, brother?
So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think my only pushback would be probably the fault perspective. Because I think there are, when you say no one's fault, right?
Okay.
I think there are factors that play into it that both sides are culpable, right? As I love history, like that's one of my favorite things to study, and studying like the historical perspective, particularly in communities of color. When you talk about government influence, you talk about the welfare system, you talk about all that stuff, really around the 1960s, when it became a better financial benefit if you didn't have a man in the home, because if you're struggling, right? So you have the government influence with Lyndon B. Johnson, that influence of introducing the welfare system, where it incentivized you not having a man in the home. So many brothers were making babies, which men and women have always made babies. That's not a new thing. But now, rather than the man being at the home, if he's not there, I could get the government assistance to take care of my needs and my housing and my stuff like that. So I feel like that's a government influence. And then I think when you talk about, drugs in certain communities, and you just talk about society at large, there are different factors that come into play with that. I feel like when it comes to men, a man's fault in the sense of not being able to provide for his family, and there are factors that deal with that. But just, especially when I think about millennials, which I happen to be one. I'm my age fits me like 1 year into the millennial group. He like
4 years out, y'all. He holding on, y'all.
He
holding on.
No, but I think brothers, man, especially if I talk about brothers nowadays, it's a very lackadaisical mindset from a lot of brothers.
I agree.
The mindset around providing, I think culture plays a big part in that, like especially growing up in the 80s and the 90s, seeing how on television certain images influence. Like you went from the Huxtables to Living Single, where you saw Cliff and you saw Claire and their family structure dynamic, and then Living Single, you have these dominant, powerful women, and then you got one man who's like was that Kyle, and Kyle is the lawyer. He's trying to get with Maxine. Maxine's dominating him, and they have this whole toxic relationship. And then you got the handyman, Obi. He seemed like the less successful, although being a handyman is a very lucrative and successful career. You talk about carpentry and plumbing and all of that. That's a whole.
He was sweet, man. He was sweet.
He was sweet. But he also got with he actually one that got married in the show. So he got with Sinclair, and Sinclair was what I would argue was probably the most marriageable, because she was the most cooperative. She was the nicest of all the women. She was the sweetest. And, you know, so when I think about the demeanor of young ladies, and as you talk about the alpha women, right? Even if you're in a house full of women, if the mindset is we are here to dominate, that emasculates the boys that are coming up in the house, right? Even if the conversation is around, like, you know, and these statements I hear a lot, like girls rule the world, the future is female, you know, stuff like that, which are messaging to empower women. But if I was to say the future is male and men rule the world in this day and age, there's pushback with that.
You gonna get crucified.
You gonna get crucified with that. And I understand why, because of how masculinity has been presented publicly versus, I would say, how masculinity actually is. Because I think men, by and large, have done a really good job of trying to push for equality, trying to push for destroying different ills that our society has historically had. Men have been kind of leading the forefront in these things. And for some reason, there's this whole mindset that being a man, being masculine is toxic. Women can do exactly what men can do. And that's what we're talking about today. She won't let me lead, because some women are like, I can lead a house just as good as a man. You know, so how do you combat that mindset? We know as Christians, there's a biblical perspective, and it's like, oh, you outdated. You try to go through these scriptures and all that. But it's like, is that really true? Can a woman lead a household equally, if not better than a man? Because if you were raised by a single mom, you may be thinking, yeah, they can. But as fathers in the household, knowing what our role is, knowing how much stability we bring, and statistically it bears out. You could have a bad man in the house, but if he's a man in the house, the chances of the children in the house being more successful are exponentially greater.
Absolutely.
And most brothers in prison were raised by single parents, if not single mothers. So that's a, you know,
yeah. So you made a couple statements, right?
Yeah.
This is our first show, and you came at me. You pushed back already. You said, "What? No, listen, yo, I love it though. I love it because you said something that was really key, and I wasn't thinking in those terms in terms of placing a blame somewhere, but you're absolutely right in terms of a systemic problem, right, with men. But here is where it skewed for me, because I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And my mother was on welfare, but my father was in the home. And one of the things that my father taught me was this. My father wasn't the greatest at everything, but one of the things that my father taught me was that no matter what happens in your life, no matter your economic status, your relationship status, you are going to take care of your children. Like, I mean, he drilled that in his children, right? So much so that all of my brothers, it's 5 boys and 6 girls. All of my brothers, with the exception of one, we all had our children and raised them alone. And so that was something that was inbred in us from the very beginning, because we had a man in the home. And here's the crazy thing. My father wasn't a godly man. My father was not a godly man. So my parents probably was just working the system, but my father stayed in the home, right? He stayed in the home. And in turn, that caused me to stay in the home and to stay engaged with my son. When I had a son out of wedlock and separated from his mother, the most important thing for me was to be with my son.
Amen.
And so that's why I said earlier that context matters. Like, what is your model? What model did you see? And so we have to begin from there and begin to deal with the model of leadership, and then unpack that, and then we'll have to deconstruct some of it.
Yeah.
You said, can women? I'm getting to it. Can women lead a
Lead the
home
household
just
this
as well
just
as
as
men? And I don't want to be
yep.
crucified because I've seen some dynamic women
Yeah.
raise some dynamic children
Mm-hmm.
who turned out to be phenomenal men and women in society,
Mm-hmm.
but they still lacked something.
Come on now.
And they lacked the influence from a man. So in I'll talk about my congregational context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I have lots of young husbands in my congregation who were raised by single moms who are phenomenal brothers, but they don't know how to lead, and they don't know how to handle having a strong woman because they didn't have a model. So mom taught them how to be good citizens. Mom taught them how to be productive members of society, taught them the tenets of faith, right? But could not teach them how to lead as a man. And that's the one ingredient that has been such a hang up in some of the marriages that I see, whereas the wife is leading the husband, the wife is the alpha in the relationship, the husband submits to the wife's authority, and that's just biblically incorrect. There is an imbalance in the relationship, and there's an imbalance in the relationship because there was an imbalance in the rearing and the growing up and the raising.
Yeah, it's excellent.
And so they bring that imbalance into the relationship.
And I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And even listening to your story, so my mom and dad got divorced when I think I was 4, and my mom told me that whole year we were in counseling that I cried every session. She said I just kept crying for my dad. I don't remember this, but that's what she told me. So my mom went through a series of boyfriends, and then she landed on a man who never married her. He was, had a lot of issues, a lot of abuse, nothing physically, but a lot of verbal stuff like that. He was the best person he could possibly be, right? So all of my life that I remember, there was a male figure in the household, but he wasn't the example of a man that I wanted to be, because I saw how he treated my mother, I saw how he treated us. So my parents, with their divorce, and then my mom being a single mother for a period of time, and then now knowing what singleness really is, she being single since she got divorced, even though she was in a shacking relationship, seeing what all that meant and how detrimental that was to my upbringing, caused me to really be like, okay, if I do have children, if I do get married, I'm not leaving no matter what. There's nothing that's going to cause me to leave. I'm sticking it out. Come, as my mama would say, come hell or high water, I'm staying in this thing through thick and thin. That's kind of what I'm doing. And so the women in my family were very headstrong, very dominant, very, very well educated. My uncle on my mother's side, he went to the military, so he got his education through the military, but he didn't achieve secondary levels of education, college, or anything like that. I got aunts that became a doctor, aunts that have a master's degree, aunts that work in corporate positions, things like that. My mother was a nurse. She got her master's degree. So I saw a perspective of women.
Your sister in your own home.
And my sister, always been a genius, right? She's the only person I know she wanted to be a doctor, since she's a doctor to this day, running a department in health out in Pennsylvania. So yeah, and me, I'm in a PhD program right now. My brother, he'll be finishing his bachelor's at some point, but he's more of like a entrepreneur type of spirit. So, he doesn't necessarily need his bachelor's degree to do the things that he wants to do. So it's just, I think upbringing, context, models matter extremely. What you were saying about the models and how they play a part. And I think for me, I wanted to be the opposite of what I saw. I think that's what was my biggest drive. I want to be the opposite of what I saw. A lot of the men that I was close to, their children didn't have good relationships with them, because these were my friends growing up. Like, they talk about their moms, but they never talked about their dads. And their dads were in the home, but they never talked about having a good relationship with their dads. A few did, but for the most part, it wasn't the conversation around dads. It was always mom, 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 mom. So I was like, I don't want that to be me. I want my kids to be dad, 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 and mom, 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 mom. So
sure.
The model is crucial, and I love what you're talking about as far as that model. And I think the pushback is always going back to the question that I posed is that song, anything you can do, I can do better, right? I can do anything better than you. And that's the whole male-female dynamic. But I don't think scripturally, I don't think statistically, I don't think society-wise, women should be running a household the way a man is designed to run it. And when it comes to terms of better, I think I would say yes, a man is supposed to, because I believe men are designed to lead, men will run a household better if he's properly trained and developed, right? So that's where the model
comes in. Being equipped.
If he's equipped, right? If he's equipped. If he's well equipped and she's well equipped, I would say he's better suited for the job, right? But if you're married to a man, as a lady, you're married to a man, if he's not equipped, then I don't think it's your job to usurp his authority, which I think happens too. Ladies are like, well, I have to lead because he doesn't do X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C.
He won't do it. Right.
And I would say that's dangerous territory, because although he may not be quantifiably, he may not have those skills, but he's qualified because he's a man made in God's image. And so it's your job to help him find his authority, find his role, not raise him. Don't be marrying no
Come on, helper.
Not raise him, but help him, right? Because I've heard that too. I've heard preachers say, my wife birthed me. And I hear that and I cringe. I'm like, no, my mama birthed me. I wasn't reborn when I met my wife. I was a whole man. Like, so I don't, you know what I mean? I hear stuff like that. Like, we got to stop with this spiritual talk, man. But yeah, the model is crucial. And I think why is poor models. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So out of that, right? Again, you said some great stuff, some key things. You know, so the model and the woman won't let him lead because he's not equipped. Let's deal with that really quickly, right? Let's deal with that piece. Yeah. Because there are many times, shout out to all my strong sisters, man. Listen, I got 6 sisters who holding it down, right? And who raised children, who's done a great job, you know, all of those things out of circumstances. But when you marry a man, brother, listen, when you are married, and sis, you have a man you're married to, and he's not equipped, it's not your responsibility to take over what he's lacking in.
That's a good one.
My brother said something key. You know, he's created to lead. He has the DNA to lead, but he just did not get the equipping to lead, right? And so when what happens is wives become frustrated, and we both know this to be true, is because the man doesn't have a drive to lead because he doesn't have the training, he doesn't have the model, he doesn't have the context. And so it starts this downward spiral, right? It starts this spiral of events in the life of the man where, and he had no model. The women led, the women were alphas. The boys submitted to the women, and then they get into the relationships, and then they begin to submit to their wives, right? Yeah. And then there is this imbalanced nature in the marriage, and there's always this tug and pull, because at some point, even though the man is not equipped to lead, he has a leader in him. There are always prickly places, right? Where there is pushback. But he doesn't really always understand, I know I don't like the way that this feels, but because he doesn't know that it's my leadership that's emerging, but it's immature, it's undeveloped, you know? And so now it's kicking against the prick, as the scripture says. It's you know, there's this wall that it keeps coming against. And it comes out in this way. You know, she never lets me do anything. Whatever I say is she never takes what I say as value. You know, what my words and my voice don't have value in her life. And again, no knock on my sisters, because they've learned how to lead in a way that says, I don't need a man. I got my own job. I got my own career. Especially women of color, which is the most educated people in our country.
It seems
Black
like they're
women.
the most unhappy about some stuff too, with all that education.
Bro, I ain't touching that. That's you. Pastor Saleem said that one, y'all. I ain't touching it.
I love my sisters. We married the sisters,
Yeah.
but it just seems.
Yes, sir.
And
they probably are sisters too.
Yeah, they got a lot of. They are sisters, right? They got a lot of education, but upset about a lot of stuff when it comes to relationships, and it comes to
talk about that, Pastor Saleem.
You know, and I don't know necessarily know why, because, and I going back to history, I think our sisters, Black women in particular, were sold this dream of, you go out, you get an education, you climb the corporate ladder, you make your money, that will make you happy, right? We'll put off marriage, we'll put off having children, we'll put off, until I become established, which is stuff men used to say. Men used to say stuff like that. Like, I got to go out here, I got to make a lot of, and so to me, that's male messaging, right? Because I feel like men's identity is in their ability to provide, and their ability to protect, and their ability to be the priest of their high, guide the philosophy and the spiritual. I feel like that's how God created men, all right? Especially I look at Adam. God gave him a vocation, told him what to do. So I feel like that messaging was somehow switched to women in the Black community, where they were told, get your education. And there's nothing wrong with getting your education. My sister's a doctor. My aunt's a doctor. My mom was a nurse. My marriage didn't work out, but my aunt, she's been married probably over 40 years. And my sister, she'll be married 10 years come June. Yeah, come June, she'll be married 10 years. And her husband, she's a doctor, and her husband's not a doctor. But she's very cooperative, very submissive, like lets him lead. She honors him, and she's my older sister, so I know her hangups. I know her shortcomings, right? And he married her knowing all of her flaws, all this stuff, and all the great things she brings to the table. Even though she's a doctor, and they call her doctor this, doctor that, when they're together, she's not allowing her doctoral education to dominate his quote unquote lack of education, which he's a very intelligent brother. He just don't have a PhD. So I think the messaging has kind of messed a lot of our sisters up. And I think they're thinking, if he doesn't come bring what I bring to the table, right? If he don't bring the money I bring, he don't bring the education. I saw a post where a young lady said she went on a first date and he pronounced the L in salmon. He called it salmon. And she said, I knew at that moment, you're not the one. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What are we doing? Like where do we get off talking about you ain't the one because you mispronounced the people salmon, whatever. But to think like, I'm canceling this brother because, and that's, I feel like women are of that mindset now. It's like, oh, he don't got the education, he don't got this, he don't got that. Not looking at, no, this is a good man. Like, okay, you got your bachelor's from Howard University. God bless you. He went to trade school. And he works the sanitation department, making 70 or 50, 60 grand a year, 70 grand a year. You got your bachelor's, you work in corporate, you making 90 grand. So because you make 90 and he makes 60 working in the sanitation department, he's not good enough for you. And it's like, that's kind of like weird to me, because brothers don't look at women in terms of how much money they have. That's not how we measure wives to be. We're not looking at you what you can have a high school diploma. He don't, like, she look good. She's she nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, he don't
make a good wife, good mom.
Exactly.
Got good qualities.
She love the kids. So it's just
so bro, listen, again, I agree with you. There's so many factors, right?
Yeah.
So many factors at play here. And again, nothing against our sisters. We love our sisters.
Oh yeah, love
but society and their context have really pushed them into an arena that God has not graced them for. Yeah. When it's like the single mom who raised boys, right? There's always the exception. There's always the outlier, right? We know that. So we're not going to deal with that. But the exceptions are few and far between. And but the norm is that single moms who raise boys always have a hard time when that boy starts to become a preteen and a teen, and they have a hard time of raising. And then they realize, okay, this boy needs a man in his life.
Yep.
You know, and then they want to put them in places where, you know, they want you to come and you know, they want the church to raise them, and they need, and I tell single moms all the time, listen, it may not be your fault that the father is not involved, right? But you have a responsibility to get your son around sound men.
Yeah.
Whether it is the church, I think the church is a great place to start. Sports, coaches, individuals who model what it looks like to be a leader as a man. And so I think, again, part of why they won't let men lead is because of what they saw, and the man is incapable at times. I get that. We you know, we understand that the man is not equipped, he's not capable. But if you marry a man and you find out that he's not capable of leading,
right,
then you have to help him.
You got to help him.
You got to help him. And brothers, you have to be open to the help as well.
Yeah.
You got to be open to, you got to be open to the help so that you can get the necessary help to lead your home and to lead your family, and so that your wife does not become the dominant force in your life. You know, from a biblical perspective, Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians 11, I'll get you the chapter, I believe it's the verses, I believe it's around 3 or 4, where he says that I want you to realize that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of every woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. And so that there's levels to this thing, right? That God created us. He created he put levels on his creation. He put order more so. I like that word better. He put order in place in terms of his creation. He says, listen, he says, I'm the head of every man. And the head of woman is man. And so that's the model. And again, we're not talking about dominating a woman, or, you know, becoming her boss, or slave master mentality or relationship, but we're talking about submission in terms of leadership. That you and I, we lead our homes in a way that our wives submit to our leadership. They've not lost their voices. They are well able to make good decisions. And there are times when our wives help us make decisions based on their own expertise and wisdom. And as the husbands, because we're wise enough to know this is the better decision, let's go with this. You know, that happens. And so that's part of her being our helper. But again, man, I think, you know, we laid out some good groundwork in terms of why she won't let him lead. Context is a big one. Him being ill-equipped, not having the drive. It's almost easier for a brother who has grown up in a home where there are alpha women to live in a home where there is an alpha woman. It's easier because life is just easier. She does everything. She's responsible for everything. All you got to do is go to work, you know, maybe bring a couple bucks into the house. Now, if you have a career oriented woman, or a career driven woman, and a woman who really is about her business and who wants to achieve and accomplish in life, that she's going to drive you in a certain kind of way. You know, and so she's not going to allow you to be lazy. And that's, I find that a lot of times relationships have that kind of friction when the husband is not as motivated as the wife in those terms. And it's not that he's lazy. It's not that he's shiftless. It's not that he, you know, you just lazy. No, it's not that. He doesn't know how to lead. And brothers, it's okay to say, hey, listen, I don't know how to lead, but I'm going to learn how to lead so I can be better for my family. I can be better for my home.
I agree with you so much on that. And I think also another side of that is he may know how to lead. It's just because of her, as you talked about, her career focus, her drive, she takes that into the household. Like, for example, he may have saw his uncle work sanitation factory. He worked for 30, 40 years. He was an apprentice. He's like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work here 20, 30 years. He's not trying to, quote unquote, climb the corporate ladder. He's not trying, but he works really hard. And so she may look at him like, aren't you going to apply for that position? Aren't you going to do that? And he's like, no, this is what I desire to do. And I think following is essential when you allow the person to go in the direction in which they're going and you assist them in that direction. So if his job is laborious, 30, 40, 50 hours a week, and he comes home, the help is to make sure the environment that he comes to is peaceful, that you're not attacking him because you're so busy at work fighting to climb and become this great guru at your job, which is nothing wrong with that. That's the career path you're on. But I think taking that mentality to the home can emasculate a man, can make a man feel like what I do is not good enough. How I provide is not good enough, right? So you do have that dynamic of she won't let you lead because she doesn't believe that, not that you're not qualified, that you're ill-equipped and you'll never be equipped. And he may be like, I was leading fine before, now you're trying to tell me what I'm doing I'm not good enough, really because maybe that's what she saw. Maybe she saw the women in her life tear the man down because he wasn't this. So I think empowerment, man, empowering brothers, and that's important because, we have egos, we have mentalities, we have a lot of stuff. And I think that empowerment piece is key. And that's what help comes in. If he come home and feel like, man, I'm doing the best I could do, and not looking at him like, oh, you ain't nothing, we don't want that either. So yeah.
Bro,
this is good, man.
Hey, this is real good. What a good start to the.
What a good start, man. So
what a good start.
Wow. Yeah, man. So we thank you guys for tuning in to part 1. She won't let me lead. Why she won't let me lead? Definitely want you guys to tune in next week to part 2. What is part 2? What's part 2? I forgot.
Part 2 is how to lead. We want to teach brothers how to lead.
Yeah.
Here's how you lead, brother. Here's how you go about leading your home and realigning yourself.
Yes.
To lead in the home. And we got some good stuff. So stay tuned.
So y'all tune in, man. Every Monday, drop a new episode every Monday. Y'all want to tune in to Excellent Husbands Podcast. You can find this podcast on everywhere podcasts are found. So excited to be doing this. And as we say, or as we're going to say, we are not perfect husbands, but we are being perfected, striving for excellence. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right.
Close enough.
All right. Close enough. All right. So blesses everybody, and we'll see you guys again. Don't forget to follow us at Excellent Husbands, wherever social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're going to get all that down packed. So, all right.
Yes, sir.
Blessings.
Be blessed.
It feels good, y'all. Just feels so good to be alive. Just to breathe this air free of charge. It just feels good to be in Christ, Just to know that He got me and He got you. It feels good.
I'm blessed. Every morning that I rise, got my health and my strength.